is a key part of Eskom's strategy to manage, ironically, the country's energy demands and to avert a total blackout. South Africa hasn't experienced the peaks of stage 6 power cuts in many months. 2023 was still the worst year, though, for power cuts on record. And experts have warned that the country's integrated energy plan at a cost of over 6 trillion rand is shoddy and likely to fail. Let's bring you some analysis on the story and what we hope to hear from President Cyril Ramaphosa on the energy front. Matthew Cruz is an energy advisor at Hohm Energy, and he joins us live this afternoon. Matthew, it's great to have you with us on the program. The energy crisis, as we know, one of a number of critical issues that we're hoping to hear something new from President Cyril Ramaphosa this year. 2023, after many promises in previous State of the Nation addresses, last year's promise was to appoint an electricity minister. It turned out to still be the worst year for load shedding on record.
Yes, well, thank you for having me on the show again. Always happy to be here. And yes, what we are looking to see from the electricity or from the president this time around is practical solutions to the problems that are facing the energy sector. And to just kind of have a quick snapshot on what he did promise previously. In 2018, he mentioned in SONA that there will be an immediate unbundling of Eskom. And we're seeing that only really happening now, very recently this year, it being confirmed that transmission has now finally become separate from Eskom as its own company. In 2019, he also mentioned that there will be a funding model change to SOEs, and we're already seeing now from NERSA that the funding model for Eskom will change from next year, provided all the stakeholders agree. There's also then the promise that he gave us in 2022, famously, that load shedding will be a thing of the past at the end of 2023, and this year, 2024, he said actually it will be at the end of this year, 2024.
Yeah, it looks like, despite those promises that you talk about, Matthew, that load shedding, at least according to the integrated energy plan, will be with us, all things considered, for the foreseeable future.
Yes, that's 100% correct. The Integrated Resource Plan actually gives a realistic view on the state of the energy sector at the moment and provides us a projection of load shedding being here for the next 7 years. This is something that I've continuously been projecting myself in the news, that we'll have a doubling of electricity load shedding over 2021, 2022, 2023, and we did actually see that. This year was twice as bad as last year, and last year was 5 times as bad as the year before. So going forward, it's going to be unlikely that we'll have a change in load shedding actually reducing over the coming year.
Let's talk a bit more about the integrated energy plan, Matthew. Essentially, this is meant to be a roadmap, right, on how we're going to deal with South Africa's energy crisis, how we're going to balance this problem of supply and demand. Does the integrated energy plan do that? Does it deal with that challenge?
So unfortunately, I'm in agreement with the energy experts like Cyril and Hilton Charlotte that say that this is a shoddy plan. It does not actually address the energy crisis directly. It's almost as though the thinking to create this document was from 2 years ago, before the energy crisis happened, as there was no actual plan outlined for how we will actually reduce load shedding in the next 2 years. There's lots of things that can be done. So, for example, implementing a feed-in tariff from the government that will confirm what returns you get when you install solar at your home or business. That has been found to be very useful, and within 6 months, 9,000 megawatts were installed in Vietnam, for example, through that one method alone, and that equals 9 stages of load shedding. So we didn't see that. We saw a very old way of thinking, and unfortunately a very slow way of addressing the energy crisis. Without real actionable plans, we also didn't see the way that the grid transmission system will actually be expanded realistically. We just hear that 100 billion rand per year is needed from Eskom to expand the grid, and that grid capacity is what's leading to load shedding going forward for the next 10 years, according to the CSIR.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned earlier the issue of unbundling, and I think if I cast my mind back, that was something that the President mentioned in his 2019 State of the Nation address. It's now 2024. It's a good 5 years later. And we've made some progress, right, in that unbundling, but we are by no means where we should have been, given that the announcement was made 5 years ago.
Yes, 100%. And this unbundling was actually spoken to in the 1998 white paper that was published by the government, talking about the democratization of the energy sector, which is the state that all developed nations are in. They have a democratized energy sector. They don't have this monopolized state that we have. And it spoke about it being a medium-term model or medium-term objective of 5 to 10 years. And now what actually happened is we went in the opposite direction. So now we finally have transmission being separate to generation and distribution, and it's happened very slowly, and it happened in a way that unfortunately has left a lot of ambiguity in terms of how the IPPs will be coming onto the grid, and NERSA themselves are not quite clear how to structure the price of electricity going forward.
What would this unbundling, if indeed we do get our acts together and we do get the process going, Matthew, what would this do for the crisis?
Great. So this process that we're going through, I see we're going to go through a bit of a rough patch before things get better. So as the market gets opened up, we're going towards a free market model where independent power producers will be able to provide power to the grid in the same legal framework that Eskom generation will provide power to the grid. And this free market model has been seen in every other country that's been implemented to first increase the price of electricity and instability in the supply of electricity before it leads to efficiencies of competition bringing down the price of electricity. So what we see is that in our projections, the price of electricity will double over the next 5 years, along with increasing load shedding and continuing of load shedding for those next 5 years. And that's why I always recommend that people take care of their own energy needs by getting a solar system. And yeah, happy to help you out. Head over to Hohm Energy and we'll sort you out by making solar simple.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about that energy mix that we're surely going to need, right? What does the integrated energy plan say about how we're going to deal with getting an energy mix as part of this, a big part of the solution?
Yes, so the one thing that we haven't seen before, mentioned by the government in a big way, is natural gas. And I'm very happy to see that included in the plans in IRP, because natural gas is actually a dispatchable power source that can provide power in the evenings and the mornings when we have our peak demand. Yeah. We actually have more than enough electricity during the day. We don't have an issue with capacity. We have an issue with the dispatchability of the power. So you see we go down to stage 0 sometimes during the middle of the day and then ramp back up to stage 3 in the evenings. Natural gas can be fired in the evenings and the mornings to make sure that we don't hit stage 6 and actually mitigate load shedding in the peak demands. So I'm very happy to see natural gas. I'm also very happy to see nuclear there as well, as it has now been confirmed to be both natural gas and nuclear a green energy source by the European Union, which then themselves were the ones that were kind of advocating for us to just transition straight away from coal and fossil fuels to wind and solar. So that transition, unfortunately, even though we've been focusing on just wind and solar for the last 5 years, large-scale solar farms, has led to the current situation, in my opinion, of having intermittent power from those sources, leading to increased load shedding. Yeah. Whereas in the private sector, deploying localized solar has led to the reduction of load shedding with their 5 megawatts they've deployed. So I'm happy to see gas, I'm happy to see nuclear. I see a lot of solar and wind without much focus on battery, which is concerning because once again, only when the sun is shining do you get the power from large-scale solar farms, whereas you need batteries very much key paired with solar in order to store the power and then provide it in the evenings to the nation. So unless you've got a solar system at home, you'll have it without power in the evenings if we follow the current plan, which is very much the risk that I see happening.
Yeah, absolutely. And we know which segment of the population will be the worst affected and continues to be the worst affected insofar as the power crisis is concerned. Matthew, let me thank you for your time this morning. Matthew Cruz is an energy advisor at Hohm Energy.